Good morning, happy rainy Saturday. You all are troopers. Welcome to Animals on Screen panel. So I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our panelists. Sorry, am I getting cues? We're good? Yeah. Thank you very much. So first I'm gonna introduce Mr. Chris M. Allport, writer, director, composer. Credits include Pirates of the Caribbean, Godzilla, Emily or Oscar, and Sanja Chronicles. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Michelle. It's wonderful to be here this morning.
We all survived. We're here, right? We made it.
That's right.
Ms. Bobbi Brink, the sanctuary founder of Lions, Tigers, and Bears, and also a key crusader for the Big Cat Public Safety Act. Welcome, Bobbi.
Good morning. Thank you, Michelle.
Good morning. And Emmy Award-winning visual effects supervisor and executive, Mark A.J. Nazal. Credits include Gotham, Westworld, and Lucifer. Welcome. Good morning, Mark.
Hi, guys. Good morning.
So last night I've spoken with all of you, and I just started writing down some of the key animal films that I really felt were my whole childhood, teens and adulthood. Black Stallion, Free Willy, Milo and Otis, Beethoven. I was obsessed with Cheetahs after Duma. If anyone remembers that in 1991, I think I saw it 3 times. Those are real core projects in my mind. I just want to throw out to all of you, maybe Chris, I can start with you. What is this draw, and how has the film industry, TV, video game, everything, how have they gone into it? How have they approached it?
Well, if you are thinking about creating a project from a marketing perspective, what do people love most? Animals and kids. And so animals and kids have been driving the film, driving cinema since the early days, since it was first invented, really. I mean, probably some of the earliest black and white film footage that you'll ever see from the Lumiere brothers or Edison or early, even if early Disney, animation, you find there's a mouse. And when you find the anthropomorphization of animals with human characteristics, people are just fascinated with it. So that draw, and of course kids get along with animals, and so there's a really big, from a film perspective, there's a lot of similarity between child actors and animals in the business.
So you were a child actor.
I was a child actor.
Did you ever work with animals when you were a child actor?
Absolutely. One of my first jobs was with a 1,000-pound pig.
Wow.
Called Sugar. And I think we were doing, I was doing a series of projects for Jay Silverman Productions, and his motto was, "We shoot anything that moves, including kids and animals." And so I was in this advertisement for him, it was me and this pig, and they had to stop traffic on Santa Monica Boulevard to cross the pig across the road. And you should have seen the looks on people's faces in the car.
1,000-pound pig and a little guy.
And the pig had more handlers than I did. I don't even think a studio teacher was there that day. But yeah, so I worked with a pig, and when Sugar and I worked together in several projects, and you were not allowed to use the honey-baked H word around her at all. Like, that was off limits. And then I worked with a frog for Apple Computer for a series of ads for them.
Was it really a trained frog?
It was a trained frog. I mean, they had some sort of clicking thing, and the frog would do whatever, and there was like 8 people for the frog, so that frog was being protected, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I love animals, and I think that they're such a huge part of our lives that why wouldn't they be part of a cinematic conversation? I've worked with dogs and cats in films, but the real question for me comes, how can I work with this animal to do what the animal is actually comfortable doing, rather trying to force it to do something that I want it to do? Why shouldn't I adapt to what it does? Because that's actually what's going to be real anyway.
Right. Well, that's a powerful conversation I want to talk about in a minute, but you mentioned these larger animals, this fascination. That's even the entire Jurassic Park franchise. Those were not real animals, and yet they dominated box office and whole generations. Mark, do you have any thoughts on that? The captivating storyline of animals on screen?
Well, I think for us, like, to Chris's point, a lot of it is fantasy because they're able to do things that we're not able to do. I mean, you look at Babe, look at the appeal of Babe. The fact that the animals spoke was something that was engrossing to audiences. There's even a film that kind of like comes to mind called Okja. It was a South Korean film about a fictional creature, and it is very touching and in so many ways heartbreaking. But yeah, people do have like that connection in particular. But in terms of the ethics behind it, I think we'll get to that in a minute, and sort of how we could circumvent certain levels of expectations in terms of how we get them to do certain things or not. In the case of the frog, as an example, a couple of things that I can think of is like those clicking things are stimuli to make the frog do things. But in my mind, you might have better luck in actually doing that in CG, which again I'll talk about very specifically, because you can get better nuances in performance with something like that. But that has to be planned in advance. You can't just choose to do that later during production.
So I have two questions for the audience. I'm just really curious, literally, show of hands. Has anyone cried in an animal movie? Okay, so that sets me up for my next question. So Bobbi, this has led to, like a lot of models in the industry, this is in pursuit of success, right? The almighty profit. To be honest, like Chris always says, it's not show friends, it's show business. You have decades of experience working with a lot of these exotic animals. Can you share a little bit about your work?
Right. I like most of you, are all, very attracted to animals. Any movie with an animal, anytime I could touch an animal, be around an animal. So I kind of got in this business by accident, opening a restaurant in Texas. I'm from San Diego. You do not see the exotic animal trade in San Diego like Texas, but when I was there, I kept seeing lions, tigers, leopards for sale, and then I would go to these places, and a lot of the places would have leftover movie animals. So just by accident, I have been doing this since 1990. I've moved well over 1,000 lions, tigers, and bears out of places they shouldn't be to a sanctuary, including my own in San Diego, and so excited to hope that our endangered species and exotic animals can be done in the movies by CGI instead of being left behind after they're done being used for the movies.
Absolutely. And you're also, right, this is to everyone, this is an industry that's very unregulated, right? I mean, there's not, I want to get into that in a second with you, Chris, but these animals, Bobbi, you've explained to me, like stock animals. I didn't explain that, almost like props. Can you explain a little bit of that?
Well, I can't speak for the movies and what they actually do there. I'm the one that goes and cleans up the mess after. So I really go in with the first responders and help get animals out of places they shouldn't be, and you'd be really surprised where they are. People's basements, garages. With the movie folks, they seem to be just in small cages, and the really good trainers will let them go to a sanctuary. A lot of them, we really don't know where they go. They disappear, they're left behind, some are killed. They go into the exotic animal trade.
So they're viewed more as props.
Exactly.
And product. And then the cost to care for these animals, it's very expensive, right? You had some quotes that you'd shared. You have a bear and a tiger. Can you share just a little bit of just what that annual?
Right, we have a bear, which we're going to show you a clips of Rocky today. And since he's been with us about 2 years, we've spent $350,000 on his habitat and $60,000 for his care. And then I also have a lion named Louie, used for the movie industry also, and advertisements. We've spent $60,000 for him and $40,000 for his 2 females, so $80,000 for them together. So these are very expensive animals, and this is exactly why they get left behind.
So that's a more expensive prop than they probably bargained for when they were acquiring it. I do have 2 clips we want to share. Just a heads up, they are a little unnerving, but it kind of demonstrates what happens to a lot, not all, but obviously a lot of these animals that then become viewed as a prop in the industry. So I believe this first one we're going to see is a tiger that doesn't want to perform. Is this not one of your tigers?
Okay. No, this is a tiger from the Life of Pi, and this guy was actually convicted for his crime. But if you have watched the Life of Pi and you see how the cat sits up on the end of the boat, you'll see what he's doing here by trying to make him stay on the pedestal.
Who's lead? Okay, well, so he's prepared to go to more trouble to not do it. And that's why I got on him as hard as I did. Okay, you want to on the ring curb? Okay, so I want to drive his head towards you. Yes. So that's what we do.
All right, I know.
Because I like getting him in the face, and the paws, which get the paws off the block. And with the beauty of the paws being on the rock, when you hit him, it's like a vice.
Yeah.
Right? So it doesn't do that, it does that. It stings more. Sit. But here's the problem at the end of the day. If we had been running a videotape the whole time we were here, and we did a 45-second montage of the times I struck this animal, Peter would bring us to the ground.
So he said the tiger would rather be whipped than perform. But again, it's not able to speak for himself, right? There are child welfare agents but not for the animals in this industry. Is that correct?
I believe there are people to protect the animals like myself, but it could be better.
Right, absolutely. And so we were trying to get a rep from the American Humane, which is the ones that regulate no animals were harmed in the making of this film. They're the only ones that are qualified to give that accreditation. The question was, what is the regulating process? Because what I understand from their site, a director or producer just receives a certificate, and then they're able to perform under this license. So we would love to be confirmed or corrected on that, but that's what we read from the site. And so then you have these animals, they're used as a prop or as an actor, and then there's also the underground element, I believe, like with Rocky. So what was his story?
So Rocky was trained as a performing bear. He was used in quite a few movies, and he was being taught to attack his trainer, and his trainer, Randy Miller, was teaching his nephew how to train animals, and the bear literally killed his nephew. So it happens, especially when you're teaching a bear to bite somebody on the neck. Luckily, Randy is one of the good ones. He really stood up for the bear, and he rode through the rough times because, obviously the bear killed somebody, and now this is a killer bear. And he did stand by the bear, and then against his peers, because when you turn an animal over to a sanctuary, that makes you the bad guy in their business. And he brought the bear to me, so he did the right thing.
He did the one thing Randy feared most.
That's great.
Okay! Where is he?
Is he bleeding? Yes, he is. He's bleeding.
Okay.
Is he doing okay? No. Okay.
He's really still.
Okay.
He's not breathing anymore.
He's not breathing anymore?
No.
I want you to take a deep breath and cover his mouth with your mouth, making a tight seal.
I was applying CPR. At this point, I had pepper spray from Stevie's. That's all over mine. And I couldn't see.
Come on, Stevie. Hold on.
I want you to count out loud.
4, 5, 6,
6,
7,
7,
9,
8.
And I just remember
12.
this feeling like he had just left it.
So again, these are animals that are trained for an entertainment purpose, but they're not actors, they are animals. And I believe you said that even because, again, coming from a good place, right? We love animals, we're fascinated by them, that there are more tigers in backyards than there are in the wild.
Exactly. There's more tigers in backyards in captivity than there are in the wild. There's more tigers in the state of Texas than there are in the wild. And there's the most big cats in the state of Florida, all kept as roadside zoos, private owners, and accredited zoos and sanctuaries.
So this isn't meant to be a downer. We are coming up with solutions. But
There is
Chris,
light at the end of the tunnel.
yeah, absolutely. And that's why we're here. We're discussing this as panelists, but also with the audience. These are models, right? So we're talking about our fascination, our love of animals has created some problems. How, Chris, in your experience, does this mirror maybe other parts of the industry that have affected change?
Well, I mean, I have to say I was stunned this morning when I learned that there are more large cats in captivity than there are in the wild, and that's horrific. Like, that can't be, and we have to change that. They are wild animals, you know, it's not a domestic house cat, you know. And I think that we, you know, most of us think, oh, well, we take care of our pets and we take care of our animals, so everybody else must too. But that's obviously not the case. And I think we have to not close our eyes to that. You know, I've worked on some projects with real animals, but I've also worked on some projects with special effects animals like Hocus Pocus. I did some voice work for the black cat in Hocus Pocus, and that was an animatronic cat. And, you know, I mean, that was before you could really do very advanced, you know, computer animation. I think it was even before Jurassic Park. You know, what Mark does, and like, you know, really, I'm the guy that needs to change. I'm the creative director, right? So, and the first thing a creative director wants is to make things as real as possible. And so when you're filming something, you always want to film the real thing. But regarding, you know, animals and creatures and things that are being used to tell a story, particularly aggressive scenes, it's time for us to think outside the box. It's time to us to turn to other technologies because, you know, as you said, Michelle, these animals are not actually actors. And if we're training a bear to be aggressive, that's crazy. And by the way, I could think of all sorts of ways to shoot a scene that's scary without making a bear actually attack somebody. You know, let's say you have a bear, you know, who is supposed to attack. You know, like Alfred Hitchcock shot a lot of, you know, murder scenes without actually showing the knife go in. And so it's very simple to do that and use psychology, as we were talking about earlier, to draw the audience into this scary scene. And it's actually even scarier when you don't see the attack, but you maybe find out the results of it.
And you've done a lot also in the arena of youth advocacy. I read recently, somewhere on the internet, but I read recently that in the earliest days, 100 years ago, of film and TV, child actors, if they didn't perform well, they would make them sit in a corner or sit in a box, like very inhumane ways on humans. That translates, if someone's going to view animals this way, they're going to view humans this way, and that's why laws have come into place to protect them. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Well, you know, there's a lot of problems with the employment of minors. Not just in the entertainment industry. You know, there's a lot of focus on child actors, and everybody thinks they're special and they have this great opportunity. Well, it is a great opportunity, but you have to also look at it, they are employed minors. And in the United States of America, minors employed in the entertainment industry are exempt from the Federal Labor Fair Standards Act of 1938, that all other employees are covered under. So you have similar issues with animals and kids not being properly protected. The state of California, I was able to affect some legislation about 23 years ago to protect minors, employed minors in the entertainment industry in California and in New York. I believe some of that legislation has been implemented in 2 other states. I think Louisiana and I think Utah maybe. That leaves 46 other states and however many other territories of the United States where media companies can take minors to and work them without a labor law. And that's wrong. You know,
Right.
You know, here in California, you know, children are required who are employed to have X amount of hours of school on a set. They cannot be worked more than 8 hours, including a 1-hour lunch break, including the 3 hours of school. They have to have a licensed California state licensed studio teacher on set to work with them. Even when it's not a school day, they're there as a social worker. But that's only here in California. And the entertainment business used to be solely here in California, at least for film. But now you film everywhere in the world. You know, you film in any state in this country. Why are children excluded from the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938? Because the studios lobbied for that in 1938. But you find that children actually contribute to 39% of the gross national product of this country, both as employees and consumers. That's a lot of money.
It's huge.
39% of the GNP of the United States of America is driven by minors, yet they have no representative in Congress. They have no representative to vote, no voice to vote, and that's why they're ignored. Animals can't vote either. And they will never turn 8, grow up to be, have a voice to vote. So, we're really kind of, in my view, need to fight this fight together, because when you need to change legislation and you have a similar track, you need all the voices in the room that you can get.
Absolutely.
And I think we need to address it at the federal level.
So speaking on that, I just want to touch on that briefly, and then I really want to hear Mark's perspective. Bobbi, you've done a lot with the animal advocacy laws. I know we don't like that word. How would you describe some of the work you've done with the big cats and some of what's going on to, on one side, prevent this illegal use and trade of animals just for props?
Right, it's really hard. A lot of people don't know exotic animal trade second to drugs and weapons in our country. So it's a $23 billion industry, and they're really hard to fight. I spent 18 years working on the Big Cat Public Safety Act in hopes it would be big cats, primates, wolves, and bears. So working with the bigger animal organizations, we got the cats. So at least we got one, and we'll be going back to get the others. But in the meantime, then we go state by state, because with the exotic animals, every state is different. So like when I started in 1990, 33 states, perfectly legal. You could own an elephant, a lion, a tiger, a bear as a pet. We're down to 5 states, and then we have the federal bill for the big cats. So a lot of work to be done, and it's really confusing, the laws, because they're different. They can be different in county to county, even like in Texas. So a lot of times if you get it illegal in one state, they pick up and leave to another. And even we just saw in our Super Bowl, the ad with a mountain lion, that trainer moved from the United States to Canada because it's legal up there versus here. So a lot of work to be done and a little confusing on the laws.
If you ever get a chance to go to San Diego to visit Bobbi's True Sanctuary, it is really an amazing place. Can you just briefly describe how your sanctuary differs from other so-called roadside sanctuaries, zoos?
Right, so we just, Mark and I, we focus on the quality of care to our animals. They probably have better medical care than most of you in this room. They are spoiled rotten once they get to our place. And we just, one animal at a time. We started our place from a cow pasture. We have 142 acres. And all of the bears have minimum an acre, and the ones that can live together are together. We have 21 staff and 105 volunteers, so a lot of passion at our place, and we just work one day at a time to be their voice and help each animal.
It's very
Of course,
special.
yeah, our education center, so you can come down 5 days a week.
You can feed without contact. You can feed these animals. I mean, chills. It's such a rush. So make sure you see Alan after. He has special vouchers for attendees today to be able to visit that. So make sure you find this guy. So Mark, then this leads to one of hopefully a primary elegant solution to this. There's several that we'll discuss.
Sure.
But can you explain in your world how this could be a solution to this problem?
Absolutely. Can you pick up one of our slides?
Absolutely.
Let's
We'll bring up
actually
some
do
of those
that.
slides.
So just to recap, this is who I am, just a little bit of context. I've worked on a lot of different projects. Some of them did have animals, and I'll also talk about and touch into some of those. But let us move on to the next slide. So interestingly enough, I actually went in with like a general format here, right? Like now that we've all identified that there's an ethics and social impact issue here, what do we do about it? Now let's talk about the technical stuff. But before I talk about the technical stuff, I really want to address people in the room. How many people here know that Life of Pi won the Oscar for Best Visual Effects very much specifically because of the tiger. How many? So why do you think they felt like they needed to see a big cat in camera on screen? Any ideas, actually, if I may, from the panel? Any ideas of why do you think, despite this amazing CG tiger, they still insisted on having a tiger on set? Anybody?
Realism.
No. Customer attitudes. So when you think of what Chris said, think about that for a minute. A lot of what filmmakers like to market is something called attitudes towards realism, right? People always want to say, oh, we shot the real thing, we made a real explosion, we shot with a real tiger, they show the behind the scenes, and somehow audiences seem to react to that, so they actually use it as a marketing tool. In fact, there's been, I don't want to name specific films, you can find out on your own, specific films that were nominated for the Oscar this year, 2 of them in fact, that claim they do not contain CG when they are running for Oscars for Best Visual Effects. Because it is sexier to tell people that, oh, we shot this for real. But the truth of it is, Life of Pi, if you take a look at the behind the scenes, a lot of the scenes where the tiger actually interacted with the actor because of the danger involved and them being in a water and on a boat was actually CG. So I think it comes down to 2 things. Attitudes coming from the audience, from a consumer perspective, but also attitude coming from that directed towards the filmmakers. Because as Chris said, filmmaker attitudes also have to change because they in turn drive what's required on set. And
Mark,
by all means...
let me jump in on that, Mark, because that's so powerful. I just want to linger on it for just a second. So in other words, us as consumers,
Correct.
You're saying we have a voice. We feel powerless. We watch this, we're heartbroken, we're powerless, but it's actually the opposite.
Oh, absolutely.
As ticket purchasers, streamers,
Correct.
downloaders, we have the control.
And
Please
not just
continue.
ticket purchasers. I think you also do realize that the internet is a big vocal box, right? You take a look at Barbie as an example. Barbie, there was some sort of controversy within the visual effects industry where they were talking about how they did all 1950s style visual effects. Blue screens are not 1950s style visual effects. Rear projections are. But they used this as a marketing tool to say, oh, we did this all for real, and it seemed like that, made the audiences feel that way. But what if we come to a point where we don't care how it was filmed, but it just looks good on screen, and that should be enough? Maybe that's where we need to get into with these animals, right? So to kind of get to that point, though, I do want to touch on a couple of different points. I always say that, as with any production that becomes successful, the decision should come from the top. It should be a creative discourse with all departments for film and TV, because not one department can make this decision. If a director says, oh, I want to do everything CG, but the producer says, no, it'll look really good behind the scenes, that's not going to work either. And then on top of that, there's budgets involved. Animals are, regardless of the technology today, are still one of the most complex visual effects elements for realism on screen. You watch The Jungle Book, yes, it's very realistic. That's because that movie was made specifically with that in mind. Now imagine if you had a show about a bear supposed to attack somebody and they decided to do CG bears last minute and they didn't plan on that. What do you think would have happened? The bear would not look good, it would receive audience backlash, and guess what the audience will say? Oh, CG bears don't look good. But no, it's not that CG bears don't look good. Production decided on a CG bear at the last minute when they realized they couldn't get an actual bear on set. So it really does have to be decisions decided on from the top and a top-level understanding of what is acceptable for the production, because if you film something strategically, plan for that, budget for that, it is certainly doable. And as you can see here, this one is actually a tiger that is 100% CG. And behind anything CG, you see that you do have to create a lot of nuances for it to move and function in reality. It has a muscle system, a bone system for it to move. And if we could move on to the next video, by the way. So as you guys can see, it is a complex undertaking that does require technical nuances. You can't just say, oh, I want a CG bear tomorrow. You have to actually build that bear, make sure that bear has controls, it has a muscular system, it has animators that can make it move correctly, it has a fur system, it has everything that you think could emulate reality. So one of the things I want to talk about is, yes, the technology is available, but there is a difference between the technology being available and also being dispersed for every little studio. There's a big difference in budgets as well between films and television. So I think as rules and regulations become more commonplace, maybe then the studios will say, oh, we actually do not have that option, therefore we know we can do this, so now let's account for that in our budget and in our production. And to Chris's point, you can also do things creatively where you don't have to always have that if you're unable to do it on that budget. Maybe they can do one bear shot instead of 20 because they only have X budget. But that has to be a conversation from the top down.
So that's an excellent point. So who, and this is to all three of you, who in your opinion, and Mark, just something you said, having that conversation, who traditionally, Chris, is a part of the production process, and who all of you do you feel should be a part of this conversation about how stories are developed, financed, and made?
Oh, there's oftentimes a huge gap between the money and creative. And you have MBA money people calling shots, but it doesn't always work out practically. It's really nice when the creative and the business are together, working together, all on the same page, but that doesn't always happen. Oftentimes, money people would say, oh, well, look at all the people that you have to hire to make a CGI shot. How many people here have watched the credits of a film and you see the VFX and CGI stuff and the credits go on? I mean, there's like 400 people there.
Over.
Yeah. Now, how many actors are there? How many?
40.
Right. So you see a scale, just a rough scale right there of the difference between, the level of employment. And what you're getting into is then producers might see, oh, well, it's going to be cheaper to hire a real animal with several trainers than it is to hire all of Mark's guys.
Which, as we know from Bobby, is not the case. $500,000 for the bear.
Right. But the money people might not be thinking that.
They don't know
They
that.
don't see, you don't think about what happens to the animal after the production. Well, that needs to be factored in. What happens to the well-being of the animal after it has done its job? So,
Mark, who do you think would be the right person to come to this table?
Absolutely. So I think I can go a little bit more granular. And again, there are distinct differences between film and TV. When you're in film, you might have a high-profile director that's able to call the shots, right? When you're on TV, you have guest directors, and then you have the showrunners and the network. So at the end of the day, I think if it's happening from a studio level, like a studio head mandates it, then that will really be the largest decision, because the studio head can mandate the directors, the production, and everybody else underneath that, because certain people underneath that will only be able to have a certain level of sway and control by themselves. Certainly not the visual effects supervisor, because by the time it comes to the visual effects supervisor, oftentimes there's already a general idea of how the production decides to do X, Y, and Z, and your role is now just to advise on how to move forward versus how the production is. However, I argue that if a production is conscious enough, the VFX supervisor is in the room at the moment of inception, so they can all decide, okay, how much is it going to take to do this for this much money? And then on top of that, if legislation is around and they know the ramifications of not having to take care of these animals after the fact, then maybe they should get dinged for that in a whole lot of ways as well. Then maybe they would think twice about the cost versus the cost plus the aftercare.
And again, this is just a reminder for us as the film and TV, game and stream lovers that it's our choices and also our voices that will affect the production and the planning of these projects. Bobbi, would you welcome a seat at that conversation in pre-production?
Of course.
I foresee a new credit that says this film was approved by Bobbi Brink of Wondercon Tigers and Bears. I'm just going to project that.
Michelle.
Absolutely. Just on that note of visual effects, Chris, I understand you have a project coming out, Sanja Chronicles. I'd love to see that trailer just really quick so we can debut this here.
Be ready for battle. They have just arrived.
The Eagle has landed.
Nestled in the north of Norway, the isolated island of Senja is home to as many secrets as it is men. Roughly 8,000 souls balancing between the Troms County coastline and the ancient Viking village of Finnsnes.
Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Sanja Chronicles, an action-adventure novel by Fansu Njai and Christopher M. Allport. Available exclusively on Amazon Books.
So this is another example of how this isn't novel anymore. This is how we consume as a story. This is how, go ahead.
Yeah, so it was written as a novel, and we're working on converting it into a 10-episode streaming series. But there's animals, there's a bear in there, there's trolls, there's wolves, there's all sorts of cool stuff. But we've always thought from the beginning that this is going to be a major CGI kind of film, and at the end of the day, I just want to say that as long as the audience buys it, that's the magic trick. You shouldn't have to show how you did it, so long as you're doing it ethically. And that's the big thing for me, is I always want to know, how can we do this ethically?
So that's something that Mark mentioned to me the other day, is this idea of who we're giving our power to. And by power, we mean our dollars, right? Are we giving power to the people that will ethically produce, whether it's with humans or with animals or the environment? Are we supporting those filmmakers and showrunners, those entertainers that are doing this with best practices? I think that's an excellent point. I'm getting all kinds of cues. We're gonna have to wrap up in a minute, but I do want a call to action, and I do have a trailer from you, Bobbi. Just also you can see her amazing true sanctuary in San Diego. Maybe we can play that.
If you drive just 40 minutes east, away from the hustle and bustle of downtown San Diego, where the rolling hills meet the mountains, you'll come upon a magical place. A place where lions nap in the tall grass, where tigers romp and bears forage. San Diego's lions, tigers, and bears. There's no place else like it. We're a globally accredited sanctuary, and for 20 years, we have been a haven for abused and abandoned exotic animals. More than 65 animals and 19 species reside at our sanctuary. Those animals fortunate enough to call lions, tigers, and bears their forever home come from all over, and each has a unique story. Together, we can make a real difference. Thank you for all you do for lions, tigers, and bears, and for the animals that we serve. Please donate today and help us to end the abuse. Can we look to you to help make every life count?
So Bobbi, how many retired animal actors do you have there? I've met some of them.
Right now we have two, Louie and Rocky. And then we do have Nola, who of course was beat up by the actor. He was literally buying baby tigers to beat him up and post it on YouTube. And we have footage of 4, we only got 1. So we're assuming the other 3 he killed. We have Nola, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a bear and 2 tigers that had been animal actors, and now they have their
Louie the lion.
Louie the lion.
And Rocky
yes.
the bear. Rocky, the one you saw in the video.
The one that we saw, the true happily ever after.
True happily ever after.
To conclude, I'd just love to get from all 3 of you, maybe starting with you, Mark, like a key takeaway, a plea to us as consumers about your position, your work, and what we can do to take this element into the right direction.
So I can approach this from 2 directions. as an audience, definitely support those projects and, speak to legislators to actually make that a thing. But as consumers, really, or actually, as future filmmakers, how many people here would eventually want to get into film or are in film? Perfect. So as filmmakers, make sure that you understand the different processes and have true creative discourse very early in your production stages, and be very well informed. Like, don't assume like you know everything, because as with the entire industry, it's a very collaborative industry, and the more you know, the better you are as a filmmaker. You can tell better stories, and better stories with ethical considerations in mind.
Thank you.
I just want to say that I think the bottom line here is, yes, there's a lot of legislation and fundraising and technical things we can do, but at the end of the day, we need to respect animals, respect them from even our own pets. Like, think about how you interact with your own pet, and are you doing the right thing for them, not for you? That animal should not exist to serve your emotional need. You should be helping them for what they actually need. And you really have to do a lot of soul searching to be able to come to that point. So whether it's your pet or you're working with an animal, a great deal of consideration has to be put into where, not what you're getting from them, but what you have to give them. And sometimes that's space, or to leave the animal alone. You have to know that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bobbi?
Chris just hit the nail right on the head. And if you can give an animal that, you will be surprised what they can give you back in return.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank our panelists and thank you to the audience. I hope this was an enlightening discussion. Please feel free to come up, meet Mark, meet Chris, meet Bobbi. Alan right here has flyers if anyone wants to visit the True Sanctuary, and we hope you have a great weekend at WonderCon. Thank you.
Actually, Michelle, you know what? To make this panel really special, since there's a few faces here in the room, why don't we get everybody up front and let's take a big group photo?
I love
Let's
that.
do that.
Let's go, everybody.
Let's promote all of the people supporting this.
Hold on, let me grab a panel real quick. Who can take this for us? All right. Probably on the ground. I don't know if the stage can hold it, but I love all of this support.
Yeah.
I love deers too.
Yeah.
Come on, everybody.
They're like the forest animals.
Incredible. Probably going to have to get people to really crush in.
Yeah. Can we bring everyone in? Andre, let's start with you.
Yes, she's one of my very good friends, and her and I we walked the hall together first. Tippy actually helped me to start the bill. Tippy chose the
let's just like in school,
Republican and Democrat that we started the very first time we started with the bill. Yeah. She's 92 now.
You were always in the back on the steps, weren't you? Okay, real quick, let's do a quick photo so we can clear the room.
All right, everybody towards the front of the room,
1, 2, 3,
please.
lions, tigers, and bears.
Lions and tigers and bears.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for coming out.